The nomination of Brett M. Kavanaugh of Maryland to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is confirmed.
Judge Brett Kavanaugh has just been confirmed to the United States Supreme Court, but from the moment his nomination was announced to the vote on the floor of the Senate was pure chaos. The U.S. Constitution enumerated that, quote, "the judges shall hold their offices during good behavior," which translates to lifetime appointments of justices. The reason that these judicial appointments are so important is because it not only affects the country for the remainder of the presidency, but for the rest of the justice's life. In the last couple weeks of the confirmation process in particular, Kavanaugh dominated the news cycle. Yes, the sexual misconduct allegations were a very large factor, but another huge factor is politics. Politics have been increasingly involved in Supreme Court confirmation processes, and this video will explain how that happened and what the consequences are. It started with Judge Robert Bork and what is now referred to as the Bork precedent. In 1987, President Ronald Reagan nominated Judge Robert Bork to the Supreme Court to fill the vacancy from retiring Justice Lewis Powell. Bork was what would now be called a right-wing extremist. Many Democrats in the Democratic Senate strongly opposed Bork's nomination.
In Robert Bork's America, there is no room at the inn for blacks and no place in the Constitution for women. And in our America, there should be no seat on the Supreme Court for Robert Bork.
Bork had views that appeared to be against minorities and was publicly against affirmative action and abortion. Bork was rejected by the Judiciary Committee and the Senate.
The nomination of Robert Bork is reported to the floor of the United States Senate with a negative recommendation of 9-5.
This was the first time that a Supreme Court nomination was rejected solely based on ideology. To bring it back to the present, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said this just a couple of hours after Kavanaugh was announced as Trump's nominee. "I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same." This was many months prior to the allegations against Kavanaugh by Dr. Ford and others. Senator Schumer and many other Democratic senators vowed to block the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh based solely on ideology. The nomination of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court caused a ruckus just as Kavanaugh has, including the allegations of sexual misconduct. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed to the Supreme Court in 1993 by a 96-3 vote, and ever since then, the partisanship of the Supreme Court confirmation process has increased. Breyer was confirmed 87-9, Roberts 78-22, Alito 58-42, Sotomayor 68-31, Kagan 63-37, Gorsuch 54-45, and finally Kavanaugh 50-48. The last several nominations have been nearly along party lines. Here's what Ginsburg said about the Kavanaugh nomination process.
How would you compare the process that you went through with what's going on today in that process?
Think of Justice Scalia, who is certainly a known character in what was it, 1986? The vote was unanimous. Every Democrat and every Republican voted for him. But that's the way it should be, instead of what it's become, which is a highly partisan show.
The Democrats have indeed had their way with the Kavanaugh confirmation process, but some may say that it's payback. Following the passing of Justice Antonin Scalia in 2016, President Obama nominated Judge Merrick Garland to fill the vacancy.
Today I am nominating Chief Judge Merrick Brian Garland to join the Supreme Court.
And the Republican-controlled Senate refused to even vote on the nomination.
This nomination ought to be made by the president we're in the process of electing this year.
That is party politics at its finest. No nominee was confirmed to the court until President Donald Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to the seat. The confirmation process of Justice Kavanaugh has been the most partisan, and the whole thing is the epitome of party politics.
I hate to say this, but this is worse than Robert Bork, and I didn't think it could get any worse than that. This is worse than Clarence Thomas. I didn't think it could get any worse than that.
Only one Democrat, Joe Manchin, voted in favor of Kavanaugh, and one Republican voted against him, Lisa Murkowski. Although some are more partisan voters than others.
When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsay said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy.
Most of Congress has become dangerously partisan. Some may say that Kavanaugh was a special case due to the allegations set against him, which is true for several senators. However, Keep in mind that many Democrats had their mindset on how they'd vote for Kavanaugh before any of the allegations. But they might just be getting back at the Republicans for Merrick Garland. In any case, both of these examples display the politicization of the Supreme Court and, in a broader context, party polarization. Party polarization has induced major gridlock in Congress. Especially over the last decade, Democrats and Republicans have been pulled apart ideologically. Congressmen and senators of differing parties agree on less and less. In 2008, Republican presidential nominee John McCain preferred to choose Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman as his running mate, but his advisors ended up convincing him to not do so. Even still, Lieberman endorsed his campaign.
I'm here to support John McCain because country matters more than party.
That could never happen today. Democrats and Republicans are just too polarized. Congress was once able to compromise on bills. Nobody got everything they wanted, and nobody got nothing they wanted. That doesn't happen anymore. It's all or nothing for the party in power, and this creates divisiveness between parties. Just look at the 2016 presidential election.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right?
The mudslinging has gotten out of control. Opposing politicians don't respect each other anymore, and politicians don't respect opposing voters anymore. This creates universal distrust in the government, and it estranges moderate voters. To bring this back to the Supreme Court, the confirmation process is meant to be apolitical. Ever since Robert Bork, however, that hasn't happened. The public sees this chaotic confirmation process with party politics intertwined throughout, and it makes them wonder what happened to America for politicians to be yelling at each other on the Senate floor.
This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics.
For people to be assaulting each other in the streets. For news stations to be constantly attacking each other's reporting.
The left-wing mainstream media's contempt for this president has now reached a boiling point and frankly a point of unhinged insanity.
The answer is politicization. It's not all Democrats, and it's not all Republicans. And it's no longer only in Washington and on TV. It's everywhere. Entertainment is now political. TV shows, movies.
So that's it. Prey fears predator and you stay in power?
Yeah, pretty much.
Songs, comedy routines, and everything else all have some sort of political message, and it's dangerous. I started making this video about the Supreme Court, but as I was writing the script, I realized that it's infinitely larger than that. It's everything. But that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.